This is the Finance and Property meeting on Tuesday, September 1st at 4:30. I'm Scott Kellogg. I'm chairing the meeting temporarily tonight, and we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves. Tom?
Tom Realm, Alderperson, 4th District, sitting in for Steve Cole today.
Shane Blazer, Mayor.
Thad Kubishek, Finance Committee member.
Tim DeSorsi, Finance.
Those in the audience?
Joe Eichstead, City Engineer.
Dean Veneman, Alderman.
Okay, second on the agenda is a presentation from the Five Bugle designed for renovation to accommodate the needs of the fire department. If you go to up there, just push the button, so the green button, and introduce yourselves.
I'm Robbie Krzyzewski, the Director of Emergency Services for Five Bugles Design and Wendell Companies. Just want to appreciate you inviting us to come today to talk about the project, potential project, we should say. We've got a presentation that we go through here that will kind of explain the last few months. We've been meeting with the chief and staff there and kind of going through the project as a whole. So we've got a slight agenda. We'll keep it as minor and quick as possible. And during the process and during the presentation, if you want, just feel free to raise your hand if you have questions during it. You know, no, it doesn't make any sense to wait until the very end. If we have a question pop up, we can address it as we kind of move through. Again, just some firm introductions. I am Robbie Krzyzewski. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Wendell's and Five Bugles Design. Wendell Companies is a large firm based out of New York's state. We have about 13 or 14 offices based around the entire country. Our office is based out of Eau Claire, so Laura and I are out of Eau Claire. I actually live in Thorpe, Wisconsin. Laura lives in Eau Claire, so you're kind of right next door to us, you could say. Within Wendell is a niche service called Five Bugles Design. Myself and Steve Gosman, who you'll see on here, and as well as Jim Schmidt, we formed Five Bugles Design close to 10, no, probably 12 years ago now, strictly to aid fire departments in the design of emergency services facilities, or remodels in this case. And it's become a niche service for us to the point that's all Laura and I do is fire stations. You know, a lot of architecture firms deal a lot with schools and city halls and libraries. Well, Laura and I are just strictly in regards to fire station design. So we're nationally recognized and various other things. And basically the way this process started is, you know, we doing feasibility study and going through everything. Steve Gosman, Jim Schmidt is a retired fire chief that used to work for the city of Marshfield. We built a station for him, so he was involved in the process. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Laura. Laura actually headed up the project for us. She kind of took on the lead with this one and the project manager in regards to the entire project. And so I'm going to turn it over to her, and she's going to kind of go over the project and over the study and the findings that we found in the study, and I'll interject it from time to time. And again, if you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll stop and address them. All right, thank you.
All right, so when we first met with Chief Young and his staff, there was really 3 goals that they said that they had that we wanted to consider and kind of make our benchmarks throughout this process. So the 3 goals of the department, as you'll see there, are gender equality, bringing our buildings up to ADA compliancy, and then also, if we do any sort of renovation, making sure we're bringing the buildings up to code compliancy. So I'm just going to kind of breeze over this one because we're going to touch base on this quite a bit. But just so everyone kind of understands the general process when we come through and do a study, we're in that very first phase, that programming phase. So From that point, we'll move into conceptual and schematic design, which we've sort of touched on in this study that we had done. And then we kind of stop, and then we would move forward at that point, if we were given permission, into the design development phase, construction document phase, and then finally bidding, construction, administration, construction, and then eventually into occupancy for your facility. So the very first part of our process is the space needs analysis and programming. So we can design stations for any department, but the thing is we need to make sure that we're designing the right station for your department. So we come in right away and we do a programming session where we talk about every type of bell and whistle and needed space that we've ever come across in a station. And as Robbie said, we've been doing this for a long time, so we have a quite extensive list. And from that, we kind of have an idea of what you're looking for and what your needs are. So for this particular study, we considered 3 different ideas. We considered your station 1, your station 2, and then what if we were to make a combined central station? Obviously, with your geography here with the rail and the river, a central station is a more challenging concept, but we don't like to leave a stone left unturned, so we wanted to evaluate it anyways. So when we came through this programming needs, we came up with some square footages, and these numbers are usually a little bit big at this point, and then as we get through the design process, we try and bring them down to a little bit smaller, is what ends up happening. But as you can see, when we programmed your stations, we felt that your station 1, if it remained as a central station, really needed to be closer to 24,000 square feet, where you only have about 10,000 right now. Station 2 is at 13,000 square feet, or is more ideal, and it's currently at 10,000 square feet, so that station is nearly right-sized in our opinion. It's just the spaces are kind of in the wrong areas. It's a lot of space in one area and not a lot of space in another area. And then if we were to put these together, could we have any efficiencies? And we got down to about 30,000 square feet. So we just want to keep those in the back of our mind, but really we want to focus on your existing stations. That's if we were to build something completely new.
You know, in this exercise with programming, basically, we're going through it, as Laura kind of mentioned, is learning about your department.
Yeah.
And by going through this entire list of rooms that we've put in any fire station, it gives us an idea of what that building would look like, or fire station would look like if it was brand new.
Yeah.
From there, then we go on to the next phase of the study and dissect all that and try to do different options for remodel and different considerations there with the department and massage that square footage. At that particular point, those square footages you saw up there, they would only get smaller if you were to build new. It's, again, 100,000 feet up in the air, day 1, 2-hour programming session. This is the size of the feet, and it comes down. And now Laura's going to kind of dive into existing facilities, and then from there, show you some options on where we massage those programs to try to get some options that work for the department in the end.
Yeah, so the very first thing on this list then is the undersized spaces, and all of this was in your report, so I will kind of go through it relatively quickly, but when you look at station number 1, for how many members of your team that you have working there, it's a rather small, very tight space. So you have a very small washroom that's not really used as a washroom right now. We have a kitchen that is very tight, very confining. We have our dining room, which is used as a training room and a study room and a dining room, and it's so tight. That top photo up in the upper left-hand corner is actually showing the tables at an angle in the room to even get it in, and there's stuff all around it because there's just not a lot of elbow room in that space. Other things like laundry and toilets and showers in your dorms, it's just very compact. They've made the best use of their space that they could possibly have made. Like Robbie said, when we were looking at the programming, we came up with we come up with other spaces that are desired or that are custom and kind of to be expected in the fire service and in any given station. So those things that would be really nice, but we don't have room for, are like a conference room, a dedicated study space so you can study in a quiet area. Making sure that we have gender equitable toilets and dorm rooms, decontamination or decon, as we like to call it. Decon laundry and decon cleaning for our humans or persons has become a really hot topic, especially with all the carcinogens that have becoming more and more prevalent in the area. We don't have anything that really focuses on that in the current stations. Gear turnout room, that's where you keep your PPE, and we like to keep that off the bays if at all possible, just to, again, keep it out of the hot zone of the apparatus bay. There's really not a training area or any privacy And there really isn't an administration space.
To kind of elaborate on the decontamination with our current situation that we're kind of in with COVID, it's kind of a learning process. Obviously, everyone's going through the same process, just not us, but it's a learning process on how departments are going to need to react, to having people sleep in the same rooms, having people use the same restrooms, those types of things. So it's over the next few years here, I see that being a very hot topic of how to keep separation of individuals in the department and not have them necessarily in the same room on top of each other all the time. So if one individual gets COVID and then the rest of them have it, right, and then you're out staff.
You're in an entire shift,
Yeah.
which is a really big challenge. So aside from the space needs, we have some code issues. We don't have the Station 1 is not a sprinklered facility. If it was built today, we would be required to have a sprinkler system in at least our occupancy area where they sleep. And our egress paths are a little bit off, considering where we actually have accessible egress routes. The ADA compliancy is a bigger issue, because when this facility was built, ADA really wasn't a thing yet. And so since that time, we need more spaces for push-pull by the doors. We need more turn spaces. We don't have any accessible sinks or showers. If you can see, those are images of curbs going up into the shower spaces. There's no leg room for your sink in the bathrooms. There's no space in the kitchen for ADA or wheelchair accessibility. In this particular station, Station 1, we have our exercise room that's down in the basement, which we don't have an elevator to, so that's not ADA compliant. And then round doorknobs, which is a smaller thing, but if you have any sort of arthritis or a problem with your hand, you can't grip a doorknob to pull it through, so usually we have levers. So in Station 2, like I said, it almost seems when you look at the square footage numbers that it's the right size, right? It was only 3,000 square feet off. The challenge is that it wasn't the right square footage in the right spaces. So the space that we're really missing it in is like the decon area. The kitchen's pretty small. The dining room, day room has kind of merged into one. But then on the upper level, we have excess space. So it's like if I could take that space and move it to someplace else, that would be great. But we can't do that. The other thing that's a really big challenge with this one, which you'll see on number 2, is in this slide. There we go, is our non-compliancies. So the bigger issue for this station is that it is a 2-story facility with a basement. It's a public use space, and there's no elevator for anyone to get upstairs or downstairs. The biggest challenge, in my opinion, there is that we have our number 1 training room, and the only training room for the department is in the basement of that facility. So if you have a firefighter that got injured on the job and still needed to come to training, still wanted to come to training, they wouldn't be able to get necessarily to the meetings that they're having for the training. So that's kind of a big thing. So I don't know if there's anything else we need to talk about. They have similar issues too in terms of ADA compliances with other things like the curbs into the showers and clearances and that sort of thing. So after we take a look, there we go. After we took a look at these stations and kind of went through what functions and what doesn't function, then we said, okay, well, how do we fix them? So for station number 1, being your central station, we actually came up with 3 different concepts, and from that we made a hybrid concept, which is the one that we would recommend moving forward with if you were to move forward with anything. And for station 2, we came up with 2 concepts. So we'll just quickly walk through a couple of these just so you get an idea of what we were talking about. This is showing you concept A for station number 1. Concept A, our biggest goal was just trying to figure out how we could get gender equity. So they had what was originally designed as the women's dorm in the future is used as the battalion chief's office. And so the way that the door was placed is so that that person has a private bathroom right now, or if it became a women's dorm in the future, then they would have a private bathroom. Like I said, they're really tight for space. So men and women share the dorm space, and so the women then don't have a bathroom, so they would have to go into the battalion chief's office and then into the bathroom. That's not a comfortable situation for anybody. So we said, move that door. So they moved the door. So we moved on to option B, which is the next slide. So option B said, okay, if we could make your space function, get you some really critical spaces, your decon spaces, get you more private dorms so you're a little bit more spread out, and make sure that we have the proper amount of toilet fixtures and that sort of thing. That's where we came up with option B. This one, it gave us our gender equity, And it would address the ADA issues in the new or the renovated spaces, which are the spaces that are covered in. So that's about a third of the station would be ADA compliant. So then we went to option C and gave you a much bigger option. What could we do with this facility if we were to renovate nearly the whole entire thing and build you a nice big addition with private dorms, individual bathrooms? We would fully meet gender equality that way. We would fully meet ADA compliancy on the entire first floor. So that was option C. So then looking at station 2, we developed, again, 2 concepts. So concept A, our goal was just to take care of gender equity and then get you the critical space of decon. So what we looked at doing was moving your PPE lockers, your gear turnout space, out of one area, shoving them up into a different area, and renovating that space to be a decon suite. It's a smaller decon suite than we'd prefer to see, but it's not a bad space, and it would definitely function. And then in the upstairs, taking a massive bathroom that is only used by one person at a time right now because of the way that it's set up, and to make it into 2 all-gender toilet spaces. So with that one, gender equity needs were fully met, and ADA issues were not addressed. So with concept B for station number 2, here we go. It was taking a look at how do we meet ADA compliancy and how do we make the station last longer. So what we felt we needed to do is obviously put in an elevator. So we made an elevator lobby with an elevator. We made an administration area that was separated from everything else. We made a decon suite that really met the needs of the station. And then the upstairs, we made their living quarters. So they didn't have living quarters split between the 2 different floors. So looking at when we presented these to Chief Young and Mike, we were able to talk through what is actually needed. You know, do we want something on a larger scale, smaller scale? What is the right scale for your fire department? So for station number 1, we came up with a hybrid between B and C, which we are calling D as in dog. And you can see there that it's renovating a large portion of the existing facility, adding on a pretty decent little addition. It gives people individual dorm rooms. It gives a nice living space, gives a nice decon area, makes a classroom space out of what is the existing day room, and gives us a couple more private offices. So that way we can actually have an administration suite in your central station. The other thing that we really wanted to consider was adding on, or the idea, potential of adding on an alternate, if we were to bid this, for an alternate bay, an additional bay. One of the things that we did notice is that you have a lot of apparatus that currently aren't parked inside the station. So if we could get one more bay on there, that would be really helpful.
Just kind of elaborate on that, when we say alternate, it'd be something on bid day that we would put in the bid documents. We would get a price to put that addition on, and at that particular time, so you can move forward with it or not accept it would be the idea there. So the idea is the contractors are there, they're mobilized, they're already there. It's never going to be any cheaper to put an addition on for apparatus based on the price at that particular time.
So looking at station 2 then, like I said, we had the 2 concepts, a larger concept and a smaller concept, and the department actually felt that the smaller concept was all that they really need there. It is an older facility, and maybe at some point in the future it could be replaced, but for right now, making sure our people are safe and that they have bathrooms are the 2 most important issues. So that's why we went to recommend the option or concept A for those.
When we talk about a gender neutral bathroom, it's more like something in your house, right? So you have a toilet, a sink, a shower, a lockable door. So anybody can use that, female or male at any particular moment. It's not the men's room and the women's room like on some stations, Actually, the last station that we did it that way was in Marshfield Fire Station, where they have a men's and a women's locker room. And if you go there today, the numbers are kind of thrown off to where you've got this nice large women's locker room, and there might be only 4, 5, 6 members there, and the rest are all men. So this kind of, it's an easier way to separate and allow multiple facilities to be used.
Do you want to talk about cost? That's the next slide.
Laurel brings me around talking about the money.
Yep.
So station number 1, concept D. So the one thing that I want to stress though is, these prices that we have in front of you today. Can you speak to the microphone? Oh, sure. Sure. Oh, I gotcha. So potential costs, when we talk about where we are right now, we're at conceptual drawings, right? So we're at bubble diagrams. not a lot of engineering or effort has gone into where we're at right now in regards to design. So we end up going and making sure that our costs are high enough to where we won't have surprises later on. So right now, we have building construction costs. You can see in the PowerPoint up here, the remodel on Station 1, Concept D, is $680,000. The addition's around $512,000, and then we have an alternate cost in there for that alternate bay. Furniture, fixtures, again, FF&E, they'll need FF&E to put in those specific rooms, whether it's beds, couches, chairs, equipment, training tables, that type of stuff. Contingencies, we put a little money on there again, because like I said, we're at conceptual design. There are things that we'll find when we do design the building and go through the building and come up with things. So we want to make sure there's some contingency there. And then just various other legal fees, professional fees, architectural fees. So, base bid on that Station number 1, Concept D, is around, 1.75 million. Total with the alternate is about 2.2 million on that one. Potential costs of Station 2, again, just the minor remodels that we had going on there with the upstairs and the downstairs, around 80,000 for the remodel. FF&E, again, very minor there because we're talking about bathrooms and various other things. There's not a lot of furniture and things happening in those. And again, a contingency we put in there and fees and various other things. And then with the alternate downstairs, that actually has the option downstairs is to do that as an alternate and have contingencies. So total base bid for the upstairs would be around $137,000 to remodel that bathroom upstairs. But then if we decide to move forward with the decontamination downstairs, we'd be looking at around $300,000. And then what we had just ended up doing is, again, we had we had the information from the programming session, so we ended up going and taking all of that square footage, and if you were to do a combined central station and eliminate both Station 1 and 2 and put everybody into one building and totally replace everything, you ended up again in that, $9 to $10 to $11 million for a total replacement facility. Again, that's for your information to have on what you'd be looking at to take both stations down. Again, you'd want to look at rivers and and railroads and different things on where that station, that ideal location would be if you were to go to that route, but that information we just included so you all had it. And that does not include a site in those costs. Good point, Laura. So what's next? So essentially, as Laura kind of brought up, we're after the programming phase and we delivered the study and we're sitting at, we've got numbers and a conceptual plan. From here, really, it comes into the next study would be all in your court. Obviously the project, I'm assuming, would have to be funded at some level, and then we would move on to different design avenues. What we ended up doing is, you'd have the different, as we talked about, conceptual, schematic design, design development, construction documents, and ultimately bidding. So the next slide kind of shows a calendar of what it would take to get to the point of actually putting the project out in a bid. So, these plans do take quite a bit of our time, so a 3 to 4 month design, is not out of the ordinary for this type of work. So right now, say if we had September 2020 board approval, design contracts finalized, we'd end up delivering a schematic design package, a design development package, and a construction document package. At every one of those phases, we'd end up stopping and providing an estimate at every one of those phases, so let you know where we're at in that process. So at any particular moment, you could say, okay, stop at schematic design, which is approximately like 20%. But that allows us to get more information on the table. It allows more, obviously, the cost to get that firmed up, and then gives you more information in the end. So by breaking those all out, this is just to kind of show that, if this project were to occur next year, and ideally the best time to bid, it would be in spring. So you could break ground on any potential additions or anything like that later on in April. And right now we are seeing very good bids coming in. COVID has kind of slowed down the work, it seems to be. You could see on residential though that it's not. A lot of people are a lot of time on their hands. So they're doing a lot of different various things with home projects and home renovations and various other things. But on the commercial side, we've seen a lot of prices anywhere from 7 to 10% less than what we did, this past spring, even before COVID. We had a project in Green Bay that was pre-COVID estimated, and then after it bid during COVID, it was $700,000 less. So I think contractors are very hungry right now, and they're interested in projects, and we're actually bidding a project tomorrow up in Schofield, Thursday. Got my days all mixed up. But in Wausau for the Riverside Fire District, so we'll have some pretty good information then on costs per square foot at that particular moment. Next slide. And the other thing that we just wanted to put out on there too is, you know, if you were to move forward with this potential project, that we really would want to talk about delivery methods at some point. There are multiple different ways you could deliver this project, whether it's just a general contractor, one bid, take it all, and they construct it, and that's the person putting the building up. There is construction management. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but basically taking the plans and specs and doing various scopes of work, breaking it apart into multiple bid packages. So you could have a concrete contractor, site work contractor, a flooring contractor, a paint contractor, and it allows the smaller contractors to provide a bid to the city directly instead of one general contractor providing one cost on the entire project. And then last but not least, we do offer construction manager services as well, where you could sign us on board and we could do start to finish construction management for you. We don't put shovels in the ground, we just professionally manage the contractors. So we'd have contractors that would be subcontractors to all of you, but we would manage that process for you. So those are the three, you know, different delivery methods that you would consider moving forward down the road. I'll let you do this one.
And then one more thing that's been kind of a hot topic with or through design in the last, I would say, 15 or plus years is, you know, LEED or green building. So we just want to let you know that we are very well versed in building energy performance. We have a lot of people on staff. We actually have an entire division at Wendell that is completely focused on energy and on, you know, making sure we can meet LEED certifications, doing the FIT or the well building program, green lights, green globes, you name it, we've probably done it. The center photo there is actually the Marshfield Fire Station just up the road, and that was actually the first LEED gold fire station in the state of Wisconsin. So that was Jim's station that we helped design for him. So he had different types of alternative energy and recycling water and reusing water, and then other things throughout the project that helped it make that LEED gold standard. So
Take any questions?
that's it.
Any questions you might have? I just want to comment on the energy savings, like solar panels or geothermal, that it may cost us some money now, but the payback in 2 or 3 years might be advantageous. I don't know what that would be, but, and if we decide not to now, but if we could affix whatever needs to be, like for solar panels. Now, don't put them in now, but do whatever we have to do, so if it was decided that we want to put solar panels, then we could.
Absolutely.
Things like that, I'd like to have us entertain.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the design process actually, is talking through the return on investment to see how much return you're actually going to get. We work with a lot of different firms, and again, we have the capabilities in-house too if we decide to go that way, where we will look at the geothermal systems. You know, what kind of system can we have? Will it work in your particular area? Do you want to do the solar panels? What kind of solar panels do you want to do? And then just making sure that if you don't want them now, but you could get them in the future, that your building can actually accept them, both in weight and in making sure that your electrical system can handle it when it comes on. Absolutely things that we would definitely consider during the design process. It's a fascinating topic, and it's constantly changing, which is one of the coolest parts about it. The best part about it is, since we did do the Marshfield Station so many years ago, so we've been doing the LEED design and green design and all these different words, sustainable design, for so many years. We've seen what works and we've seen what really doesn't work. Technology is constantly changing, so just because it didn't work at one station doesn't mean it's not going to work for your station, but at least we can say, hey, these people did not have great luck with it, but these people over here did. So then you can make the decision, you can be fully educated on what you want to do.
And that really comes down to the different phases, as Laura mentioned, so schematic design, right? If we stop at that 20%, we'll make sure that, okay, if that's a feasible option for you, that you make that decision at that point, but we give you the information to say, yeah, geothermal would cost this much, payback is in, 15 years or whatever you want to say, or solar panels or various other things. So that's a part of the process, and that's certainly things that we'd want to know upfront on what options you would want to look at, and then we can give you the information to decide whether you want it in the project or not, or plan for the future, as you mentioned.
That'd be great, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Thad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Just real quick, looking at this, obviously a lot of information to digest, but your ultimate recommendation, at least the primary one, Station 1, it says here kind of a hybrid between B and C. I guess, and not to try and pick or, how because it's almost kind of easy to throw B and C together type of a thing. How did you come to the conclusion for B primarily, and how did you come to the conclusion for C? And then, with the recommendation being kind of a combination of both of those.
Yeah, so I would say it was really a team effort. So when we looked at B and C, it was more our team kind of looking at your program and trying to figure out how can we get you the most amount of things that you really absolutely need. So the gender equity, the decon spaces, individual or a little bit more individual space. How can we make that as tight as possible so you have the smallest project possible? That was concept B. And then we made concept C and I said, okay, well, let's try and give you more of what you want. So you already have the contractors there. Let's see. So things that we changed between them is we have a training room in concept C where we didn't have that in B. We had individual rooms in concept C, whereas in B, we had rooms, but instead of having full walls with doors, we were dividing the spaces with lockers, with furniture, instead of dividing it with walls and doors and all that jazz, because that stuff takes up space, right? We reconfigured the day room, the kitchen, the living spaces for the crew in concept C, where in B, we just kind of said, okay, you're going to use all those existing spaces. So when we showed that to the department, they said, okay, well, we kind of think that B might be a little bit too small. As previously mentioned, we really feel that dining room was really undersized and your kitchen was really undersized. So if we are going to be doing this project, maybe we should consider those a little bit more. But looking at concept C, it was almost too luxurious. We don't need that space, and we can make do with this space. How do we do this? So we worked with them to kind of massage them together and say, well, we like this, but we like that. How do you make it come together and meet in the middle? It should have been option B, C instead of option D, but yeah, so that's how we did that.
And again, not to necessarily pick apart type of thing. So what concept B is kind of maybe the fiscally responsible or the thrifty type of, and again, I don't want to put it on kind of a scale from 1 to 10, but the B would be more on the starter end type of a thing that we might be obsolete in 10 years. And then C was the grand kind of high end. So we're looking at two, and again, I don't want to diagnose it as two polar opposites in terms of this, and then we're looking at the middle, we're looking at the compromise. But is that kind of it? Like you said, is kind of concept C was a little bit luxurious in terms of what we need. Is that where the thought process was?
Yep.
Was we got a starting point, we got an ending point, and
Yep.
then we'll probably come to the middle?
Exactly, and actually option A was your district or your department's not going to be there much longer. So just move that door and it's close enough for jazz. Option B was we want to give you the spaces that will work. The space will function. Is it going to be nice? It'll be fine. It'll be usable. It'll be functional. It's not going to be anything super fancy. No one's going to come in and say that was a poor use of taxpayer dollars. Option C still would be very functional, still be very usable. In our opinion, it's still a good use of taxpayer dollars. We're really sensitive towards that. But it's just making sure that they got a little bit more space, a little bit more elbow rooms. The bedrooms were a little bigger. The kitchen and the day room and the spaces that they live in are a little bit bigger. The offices are a little bit bigger. So it's just a little bit bigger. So yeah, it was kind of just taking both, trying to figure out where's your sweet spot in that middle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. sorry, just to add on to that too, I mean, that's what the design process should be. It should be a compromise and a discussion between all the parties at the table to make sure that we can design anything for you. It's not about us. Again, it's about you and your department, so.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? This isn't an action item, it's just a presentation, right? So
Yeah.
we don't have to
Yeah.
make a motion. Okay.
No.
Maybe I have a question for Scott Young.
He has a question for you.
How, now you're working with the contractors. Have the firemen or women looked at the concepts, or how are they involved with ideas that are they in agreement with the concept BC or?
Early in the phase, we went with, the department came and sat and we met with, I think, Laura and somebody, and we came up with the concepts and the solutions that would work for us. So they've been involved initially, and then after that is when the concept A, B, and C came forward for us. So, concept A just doesn't work when you look at what the new station would cost. We didn't think that would be fiscally responsible. B would work, but it sets us up, I think Laura mentioned 5-10 years, and we don't have training over there. We don't have the needs we have over there. And C seemed, like Laura said, a luxury option. So we came with a B, C, or D. So through the process, though, the firefighters have been involved in this. They've looked at these concepts. They've helped develop them and drive them. So I would say, yeah, they have had. And Mike and I have been working on it, but the firefighters initially, we did have a meeting and came up with everything we were looking for.
That's great. I just like the process because sometimes the user, the firemen or firewomen, maybe have a thought that we haven't considered. So I think the process is great.
It is. I think what you'll see is through this, we met as a management team after this, and we came up what works for us and what's fiscally responsible for the citizens. And that's how we came up with option D. But I think what you'll see is some members would like to see a central station. And personally, as fire chief, I don't see that as feasible with the railroad tracks and response times and the cost of it right now. So that's how we came up with D, trying to be responsible and meet the needs of everybody. So.
Good. Thank you. Mayor Shane?
Just a question. Does D, I can't tell, does that include a training room? Does D?
D is in dog?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the purple space in the center is a training room. It's not as big as what we were presenting in option C.
Okay.
It's not quite as big as what you have in the lower level of Station 2, but it's a decent sized training room, yes.
Good. I think that's an important addition.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to number 3. Consider the approval of a contract for assessment services from Forward Appraisal LLC, Steve Shepro, for assessment years 2021, 2022, 2023.
This is Sue Schnell. I can speak to that if
Okay.
you would like.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue.
Right, so, okay, so Steve, we've been working with for a number of years. It's got to be at least 10 years, I'd say. Steve would probably know better than I. But we've had a contract with his company for a number of years. We've been very satisfied. He is very reasonable in terms of the cost of the contract. So we're requesting to extend that contract for another 3 years, although we would have the ability to opt out after each assessment year if we wanted to. And I would recommend approving the contract with Steve's company. And I believe you each have a copy of the agreement.
Right. Yep. Any questions for Sue? Is there a motion? What's,
I guess, do we have any other, was this an RFP? Did we send this out in terms of soliciting any other assessors' offices or assessors' firms with this? City attorney said we. I don't know who we is. We as being the members of the committee as well as members of the council, I think could be used in terms of using a we, but I don't know who the city attorney is suggesting we are satisfied with it. So I mean, it just, is this something that we should send out as an RFP, or is it should be something that we should look at? You never know. I guess that's my thoughts.
I guess we would be, I sent it to the mayor, I sent it to the finance director, I've asked around different department heads, and I think the consensus was to continue with Steve. No, this was not an RFP or anything, it's just an extension of his contract. If you wanted to go out for an RFP, we can certainly do that.
Mayor Shane?
I just want to, I guess, kind of echo some of the comments that we've used this agency for quite a few years now. I think he's done a very good job. They provide services for Stevens Point, Marshfield, the surrounding communities. And so I just want to echo that I'm in favor of this contract.
I would concur with both what Sue and Shane said, that we've worked with Steve for many years, been very pleased with his work, and I think it's definitely good value for the service that we get.
Any other questions or comments? Any motion?
I'll move that we approve the contract with Forward Appraisals with Steve Shepro.
All right, I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
All right. Number 4, consider the Wisconsin DOT signal and ITS standalone program grant application for signal improvements along Riverview Expressway at Chase Street, West Grand Avenue, and High Street. Joe?
Just to give you a little bit of background, in late 2018, 2019, the city became aware of some issues at those signalized intersections, mainly related to the preemption with the railroad. The DOT was involved, the Federal Railroad Administration was involved, and along with Canadian National. And we did some basic improvements at that time and upgrades to get it back up operating effectively. And during that basic improvement project at that time, there were some long-term needs that were identified at those intersections. So the scope of work for the signal upgrade at those intersections includes upgrading signal wiring, especially to the circuitry for the railroad, implementing gate down programming, upgrading cabinets, camera detection, battery backups, and possibly even flashing yellow arrows and monotubes. So the grant itself is a 90-10 grant, 90% state funding, 10% local funding. If the DOT approves the grant application, implementation wouldn't occur until 2023 or 2024. Grant applications are due September 11th, so it's a little bit short on timing, but we did validate with the DOT that if the city were to submit, is there any issues with rescinding the city's application? At the time when we would go to budget the project or or whatnot. And they recommended getting the application in on time and then rescinding it if necessary. In fact, they do that as well with their own applications that they submit through the program. So I guess with that, look for approval to proceed with the grant application.
Any questions? Okay. I'll make a motion to accept the Wisconsin DOT Signal and ITS standalone program grant application as stated. A second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There's no opposed. Beverage operation license, they're right here, and there's no recommendations from the police chief or the city clerk to withhold any one of them. If you want to look at them, you can see right here. I would make a motion to accept the beverage operator's license.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Okay, audit of the bills, the invoices of checks number 5,048 to 5,471. Any questions about those?
Well, I was just going to say, since I got those to you just today, if you just want to, if you didn't have time to look through them, we can just defer those to next month. But I did provide you with those so you can review them. But if you don't feel comfortable taking action on such, receiving them information at a late hour, we can just defer it to the next month and approve them there too.
There wouldn't be a problem if we defer it?
Nope, nope, not at all.
What's the wish of the committee?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second. Okay, the invoices of check number 5,048 to 5,471 are approved. Okay, preliminary budget discussion. Tim, you want to talk about that?
Sure, it was just, departmental budgets were due Monday, August 31st. I have received communication from several departments that they're still finishing up those budgets, and we'll get them in hopefully by the end of this week. Once the budgets are in, I'll be reviewing them. The mayor will be reviewing them. We'll be setting up internal department meetings to have that initial review with the department of their budget. And then, so basically through the month of September, we'll be reviewing those. I'll be compiling the overall budget, doing revenue estimates. And the goal is at the October 6th Finance Committee meeting is to distribute a budget. Until I get a clearer view of where we're at, I don't know, if it'll be theoretically balanced at that point, but we want to get it into the committee and council's hands at the beginning of October, so that you have the chance to start reviewing those departmental budgets. And we'll probably at the October 6th set up some meetings, finance meetings throughout the month of October to have whatever departments you want to have come in to the finance committee meeting and go over their budgets. And then obviously throughout October, I'll be giving updates as we get in, clear estimates, like we don't get our DOT transportation aid estimates until October and things like that. So we just kind of wanted to give the committee just an update of what the kind of the plan is over the next 2 months. But on October 6th, we'll have a more in-depth discussion and set up some meetings in October to review specific department budgets.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I guess my only quick thoughts on this is that I'd like to see more budget meetings than we had last year. I think we only had 1 or 2. I know it was not more than 2. And with having a new mayor, and obviously Shane has local government experience, so he isn't brand new, but in terms of identifying the actual administrative budget, and it technically it's the mayor's budget, but regardless, I think that we need to we need to be involved in the creation of this, because ultimately the council is the one that approves it, it confirms this budget. And and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, it was our responsibility. I think any one of the 8 council members could have said, hey, we need to have more budget meetings, but I think it was kind of almost fast-tracked last year. So if that's a possibility, Tim, to kind of almost maybe throw out some dates, possibilities, and then we would collectively, whether it's at the next finance committee meeting or if we actually establish an actual budget meeting, we kind of identify those and collectively agree that we need to take the time necessary to actually, sit down and go through. And we don't have to do line item by line item, but I mean, it's something that this is a significant part of our organization, and we should spend a little bit of time doing that. So those are my thoughts.
Mayor Shane?
Thank you. I concur with Mr. Kubiszak. We haven't seen any budgets yet, but or any revenues, and I predict next year's could be a challenge. And we just saw a really important presentation, which I think has to be a priority with the fire station remodel, and that potentially could be the big project next year. And yeah, it's going to take the council probably to make some hard decisions along with staff to try to get a good balanced budget that's very reasonable and favorable to the taxpayers. Thank you.
I agree with those comments. I mean, it's going to be a challenging year all around for all the cities, so I appreciate your comments, and I agree. Okay? Any other comment or questions? We'll set the next meeting date for Tuesday, October 6th at 4:30. Oh, Tim?
Oh, no, I was just going to respond to Alderperson Kubiszak's comments. And
Okay.
I would anticipate through the month of October that we, at the very minimum, have probably a finance budget meeting once a week during October. If needed, we could, have even 2 meetings in 1 week. That's not a problem. Years ago, we used to meet twice a week for a number of months on the budget. So it's really up to the committee, but I would say at a minimum, we would have a finance committee meeting scheduled every week of October and probably November.
Tim, can you look at your calendar and walk us backward from the budget approval, what you have to do for a notice? And again, don't go into elaborate, we don't have to walk back all the way till today, but there's certain procedures, so we need to have, and I think last year we changed what our budget hearing process was. Typically, we would have the budget hearing on the November council meeting, but I believe last year we had it a week early because there was concern if someone brought forth a change to the budget that we would be able to implement that change, and nothing ever kind of came about it. But 2 years ago, it was
Right.
provoked because of 2 years ago where there was 3 or 4 residents that had suggested changes to the budget, and we really didn't have an opportunity. Secondly, there was also what is unclarification? What is the opposite of clarification? There was some questioning whether if we did not approve the budget at the November council meeting, that we would run out of time and we wouldn't be able to get the numbers to the county treasurer's office to have our taxes printed. So again, I don't know, maybe that's up to us whether we want to have the budget hearing at a different time than the actual council meeting. It really didn't make a difference last year when we changed it, but we do have to notice that in the newspaper, and it's got to be a class 2 or class 3 notification. But I'll let you speak, Tim.
Yeah, sure. Historically, we've had the public hearing on the budget on that November, the 3rd Tuesday in November at the regularly scheduled council meeting. State law requires that you have to publish notice of that public hearing 15 days. So according to calendar, the public hearing would be on November 17th at that council meeting. That means we would have to publish the budget on Monday, November 2nd. Now, that doesn't mean that the budget that's published for the notice of the public hearing has to be the exact one you adopt. It can change. I mean, this is, usually these budgets are in flux until adoption. So, but it is correct that usually by the beginning of December, we need to get what the the tax roll information to the county so that they can start processing bills that usually get printed and sent out mid-December. So, obviously, if you moved it up to the 10th, then obviously you'd have to put the public hearing up to the 10th or even the 12th. Then you just have to push back your notification. But, like I said, you can have the public hearing, but you don't necessarily have to approve the budget at night. So we could have maybe the public hearing on November 12th, like a Thursday, and then do the final approval of the budget on the 17th to account for if there's public input, and then we want to consider any of that public input and make changes as opposed to trying to make the change at that meeting, as you receive that input and trying to make the change right away. So it's really up to you, and I think that as we get into the budget on October 6th, we can definitely discuss some of that timeline, and I can put together a proposed timeline of meetings and things like that. And then at the October 6th, we can have a more in-depth discussion as to when we want to schedule the public hearing, when we want to have final approval for council, and what finance committee meetings that we want to schedule throughout the month of October and November.
Any other comments or questions? I agree with that. Let's tentatively think about November 12th as the hearing, and then back from there. I mean, we can change November 12th, but let's consider that as the hearing, so we can make any changes if we have to. Okay, I mentioned the next date of the finance and property would be October 6th at 4:30. Any other questions?
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, do we want to make a vote, although it's not necessarily on there, but it would be more of an internal thing? Do we want to have a straw poll that suggests that we want to have that budget hearing the week before, at least so that it holds a little bit of weight with the rest of the council members?
Okay,
Because I'll vote in favor of that too. I'll support your suggestion or your measure.
I'll make a motion to tentatively plan November 12th as the hearing, budget hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, none. Okay, the meeting's adjourned at 5:30.